Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Ballycastle in Northern Ireland and the spectacular Causeway Coast for stop number 4 of the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. We are ramping up to watch rounds 2 and 3. There are 4 rounds in total. Round 1 took place yesterday. I'm Trace Worthington. Sitting next to me is champion cliff diver Joey Zuber as we get set for a beautiful day here in the Northern Ireland Causeway Coast. Joey Zuber, the cliff diving expert, sitting next to me. Absolutely stoked to be with you from this dramatic location, rugged Atlantic coastline, Joey. And this is going to be a really intense competition. The 4 rounds of diving. Yesterday, one of them took place, Dunluce Castle. And then today, we're going to check out round number 2 in Kinbane Castle area. Then we're going to move on to this spot right here, which is the Ballycastle Harbor. And this is going to be tricky and challenging for the divers. Probably one of the most in the 15 years of the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. Yeah,
intense would be a word that comes to mind. And with those 3 different locations, as you were talking about, so Dunluce, Kinbane, so some of the off-the-cliff rounds that we'll see will just be absolutely dramatic. And of course, very chilly conditions. We're at 13 degrees Celsius. So that's, what's that, 55 degrees Fahrenheit for the Americans over there. But that's not easy on the divers, man. Well, a chilly day for sure, and hanging out in the weather is Michael Frosty Snow. We're going to check in with him before we continue on with the competition. What's going on, Frosty?
Hey guys, it was an early morning today. We got up, caught the sunrise at Kinbane Castle, and let me tell you, it was absolutely stunning. There was dolphins in the water and some incredible dives. We saw some amazing performances from both the women and the men at our second. Amazing to watch. You guys got to check out some of these dives. The people are already lining up for round 3, about to kick off here in the harbor in Ballycastle. But first, definitely round 2, because it was mind-blowing. Back to you guys.
All right, Frosty, thanks a lot. And we'll be checking in with him often as he's on the ground, cruising around, kind of cutting in a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, the internet machine, sometimes we'll catch up with him, but...
we are in the middle of nowhere, let's face it.
But before we get underway with round 2, and then we'll continue on to round 3, if you're new to cliff diving, here's how it all works.
Each Red Bull cliff diving event features 8 permanent and 4 wildcard divers per gender. There are 4 rounds of diving, with varying levels of difficulty. The panel of 5 judges has less than 3 seconds to evaluate the parts of each dive. The judges then award scores from 0 to 10. The highest and lowest scores are eliminated, and the remaining 3 added together. This total, multiplied by the degree of difficulty, gives the dive score. And all 4 dives are added together for the event score. Finally, series points are awarded at every event, with a bonus point for the best dive of the competition. At the end of the series, the divers with the highest series points are awarded the King Kahikili Trophy.
All right, so what a beautiful, beautiful shot. The green and lush grasses
of
the Kinbane Castle area, and you can see it down below right in the center of the screen, and that is the location for round number 2. And Joey, it is going to be spectacular coming off of these raw cliffs. I mean, your thoughts? I mean, what do the athletes have up against him?
Everything.
Yeah.
No, I mean, very challenging. I mean, you've actually got to get to the dive spot. That alone is something to behold, so we'll see that in the actual show as well. So
actually,
impressive.
Yeah, actually, Frosty takes us on that journey right now. Check it out.
Look at that view. What more could you ask for? You can see what's left of the castle right here. Most of the rest of it has fallen into the sea by now, but you can still see a little bit. What was so appealing about this location, as we make our way up, you can see some of the divers coming into position now, checking out. Yes. And there's that view we were promised. Worth the early morning wake up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But maybe just because we need the grill.
Quite the journey just to get to the dive spot, Joey. This is no like regular pool diving here
No,
on the
it's
Red Bull
not.
Cliff Diving World Series.
Not at all.
Once again, round 1 took place yesterday. We'll get into round 2. Round 3 coming up after this. But this is the start list. We'll kick it off with the women. And there are the top 4 that we'll see diving last in round 2. And round 2 took place earlier, but we're going to take it through you with the commentary. Joey and I will have all the goods. But Joey, all 4 rounds count in this competition, as we saw in the description. So every single dive and every single moment counts. No excuses. Everybody has the same situation going on in this competition. 4 rounds to be on top of the podium.
Speaking of the situation, rappelling down from the top of the Kinbane Cliffs into the off-the-cliff round. So we've got 2 off-the-cliff rounds here on the Causeway Coast. And actually the schedule, Trace and folks, has been pretty demanding on the athletes. So they had some off-the-cliff dives that took place yesterday in the evening. And I believe they probably didn't wrap up till around about 8:30 in the evening. And they were up very, very early in the morning to dive off the Kinbane Cliffs as well.
Just to show you the journey down to the dive spot for the women. And this will be Paula Gilibert to kick things off in this women's round number 2. The 26-year-old of Spain, making her debut on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. Quite a place to make your debut,
I was
Joey.
going to say, thrust into the Red Bull cliff diving scene, doing it with style.
And don't forget, we on YouTube, so even though we're commentating this round 2, and then we'll go in live for round number 3, you can weigh in on some comments. Joey and I will do our best, along with our crew at Red Bull Cliff Diving, to answer any questions that you might have. But to get it started, round number 2 of the women. 12 women, and then we'll move on to the men, 12 men, before we move over to Ballycastle Harbor for round number 3. There. The water not as rough as it normally is right here, Joey. 6 meters, 21 feet is the depth as we check out the opening dive by Paula Gilibert of Spain. Not bad for the rookie on the series right here, Paula Gilibert from Barcelona. She's only been cliff diving for about a year. Not bad.
And look at this, feet on the cliff face. And another thing they have to deal with, they need to make sure they move far enough away from the cliff face, obviously for safety reasons, but when you move a long way, when you push a long way out away from the cliff face, that makes it very difficult to get the rotation. Actually, normally a lot of the athletes will do front takeoffs because they find it easy getting the rotation. But there's the judges.
The 5 of them.
They look warm,
Yes.
warmer than the divers.
As we explained earlier, the high and the lower toss, the remaining 3 multiplied by the degree of difficulty. So you see her first score on the left-hand side down below, and then her second score in yellow, 42, right there. So 2 rounds done for Gilibert as we move on to Simone Leadhead, new permanent diver on the series, a 21-year-old. Guiding the safety divers down below, Joey, on where to be and where she's comfortable having them there and replaced in the water.
Look at that tiny little position to dive from.
Dropping in, Simone Leadhead, making her 8th ever appearance on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series.
Here, the double half. So in the tuck position there, coming out and looking at the water. As a reminder, diving from around about 21 meters at 70 feet high. As she hits the water, if you're wondering how deep the water is, it's around about 6 meters.
Great.
But the first thing that actually happens as soon as you finish the dive is that sense of relief. Second thing that happens is, whoof, It's cold.
She'll keep 3 5s, multiply those by the degree of difficulty. 39 points on that, and she'll be in 6th with a 74. 2 down of 12 women, round number 2. Causeway Coast of Northern Ireland in the Kinbane Castle dive spot, the Lord's Prayer. The striking location as we look at Patty Valenti of Brazil, 36 years old. Getting close right there to the safety divers, Joey.
Real close indeed.
Might even hit one.
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenging part with the sport of cliff diving. When you have wind and when you have current, sometimes for the safety divers, it's very easy to get put off position. It's quite hard to understand exactly where you are in the water when you're looking up the whole time, but very, well, touching the safety diver there. And we are thankful that the safety diver wasn't any closer.
Oof.
Wow. Scenes are getting pretty dramatic here.
She did come out and gave the A-OK. 6.5 to 6s. So again, down lower left. First score, 51. Second round, 48-10 in the yellow. Right now, 99.10. So all 4 rounds, again, are added together. 2 in this case. One of the viewers, Joey, asking how common is it to rappel down to the dive spots? Not that common.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, in, for example, Portugal, we've had the same situation where the athletes rappel down into position. In Lebanon, in Beirut, we had a monolithic cliff face that was separate from the mainland, and we had a zip line. So we had the zip line that went from the mainland over to the monolithic cliff face. That was pretty dramatic as well. But this is a very long descent into position. It's around about 10, 12 meters.
Okay. Here's USA's Maylee Carpenter, Joey. The 36-year-old, pretty strong diver. Here we go. Oh, I love that form right there. Old school look in there. I like that.
I do too.
You do?
Got a lot of class.
Do you ever do that?
I did. That was that. Actually, that's one of the. Actually, as a matter of fact, this is the most common dive that everyone learns. We call it reverse 3 pose. So reverse 3 positions. So the first position is the pike there, touching the toes. Second position is that beautiful layout. Third position is that tuck position right there. So it's a nice, simple, easy dive. And when you're learning to cliff dive for the first time, it's best to work your way up in height increments. So that is a very common dive to start with. Just because it's nice and simple. You don't want to start with quad somersaults and quint somersaults. You got to take it easy, especially in a location like this. But Maylee Carpenter has that climbing background. She's definitely used to these kind of conditions.
So Maylee Carpenter will bowl into the lead. 2 rounds of diving with a total of 105.10. A reminder, earlier today, this is round 2 off the beautiful Kinbane Castle dive spot. Striking historical ruin on the northern coast of Northern Ireland. Gina van Kotvik of the Netherlands, 39 years old.
You can see that wind starting to pick up there. There's Manfred, actually, who's part of the climbing team and the rigging team. Fantastic job with the athletes.
You and I were talking about wind yesterday, Joey, and I was asking you when you were a diver, you know, what that wind did to you and how it affected you. And I, as a skier competing in skiing a long time ago, that wind always affected me, my equilibrium, and it was annoying.
I mean, the hardest part about the wind is actually standing on the platform or on the cliff. Once you're in the air, you're in automatic pilot mode. You don't feel too much. If there was a massive gust of wind around 60, 70 kilometers per hour, yes, it might move you in the air a little bit. But what bothers you is standing on the platform, especially when you just got your feet perched on the cliff face. You can feel the wind and it can put you off balance. And you don't want to be off balance as you're about to start your dive. Gina van Kotvik just taking a moment to poised and get settled into position.
Yeah, she's dove, she dives on cruise ships and, not in front of audiences mostly, Joey. And now she's diving in front of 5 judges. That has to be, a lot different than diving in front of a crowd, just kind of clapping away. And you can make mistakes and small mistakes and they won't know it. But now diving in front of 5 judges, she only had 5 appearances on the World Series. So, now you're throwing on the side of a cliff.
I mean, I like to say, look, diving is a performance sport. You're there to perform for people. You're there to perform for the judges. But as you said, it does add that extra bit of pressure.
The eldest of the women in the field of 12 competitors. Round number 2, again, earlier today. Move on after this to the men, round 2, then over to Ballycastle Harbor.
see her feet, just trying to get those feet nice and curled over the rock face to give a bit of grip.
Wow, Jeannie put one
Nice,
down.
Jeannie.
And that's the way to do it. Not easy right now, Joey. Now, you mentioned earlier, these guys got up really, really early for this competition. And then it's a long day. All the athletes just arrived a couple days ago. And very few warm-up dives. Incredible.
And to put it into context, so last night, they were diving up until about 8:30. They probably wouldn't have got back to the hotel until around about 9 o'clock. Then they had to back it up, getting up at around 4:30 in the morning on the bus, driving over to this location. So this has been a tough schedule for the athletes.
So she'll move into the lead with that 62.40 on that dive, adding that with round number 1. And Causeway, the Netherlands, 124.40. That'll set her up nicely before we move on over to the Ballycastle Harbor for round number 3, as we take a look at Madeleine Bayonne of France, 28-year-old, first French female to dive on our Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. Joey, how crazy is it just to stand on that little perch right there? And, angled. It's usually the platforms are completely horizontal, but there's a little angle on that thing.
Yeah, we've dove off some pretty crazy locations. We did one in Thailand, diving off the stalactite, so we had to actually Prussic up a rope in the open air. And she's just telling the safety divers to just need a moment. You can really see the wind is starting to get quite gusty, maybe bothering her.
So Bayonne dropping in, and not much of a splash there, so that'll win over the judges in terms of that category. But Joey, how did she do in the air?
Did really well. So the judges need to look at the takeoff. Is it nice and strong? But here, of course, you need to move further away from the cliff face, so there won't be any deductions from that. If you're diving on the platform, you tend to keep it a little tighter to the cliff faces. But just talking about another topic here, these locations are tide dependent. So I was talking about how the athletes had to dive late last night and then early this morning, and that's due to the tide. So we need to make sure we're diving at the right tide so we have enough water depth in these locations. There's a lot of planning that goes on behind the scenes to make these competitions possible.
So Bayonne will move into second. We've had her first and second round together, 120.60. Just a reminder, this took place earlier, the Kinbane Castle dive spot, the iconic Lord's Prayer. You're watching the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series, stop number 4 from the beautiful Ballycastle and Causeway Coast of Northern Ireland. Trace Worthington with Joey Zuber. We thank all of you for weighing in on YouTube. Go ahead and throw some comments out there. I'm actually reading a few right now.
I was going to say, fire away, people. Is there anything that you're wondering about the sport of cliff diving? We're here to answer those questions for you. And once again, as a reminder, diving from 21 meters, 70 feet high,
the
cliffs of Kinbane.
A guy named Martin who said there's some great directing. I agree.
Good on you, Martin. Killer directing. Look at these rugged cliffs, raw conditions. This is wild.
So it's just perched out that limestone surface. And Morgan Herculano of Switzerland, 24 years old, made her debut this season at stop number 2 in Boston, USA. So she's just getting started here on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series.
You can see Morgan pushing away from the cliff face, but the cliff face actually starts at angles out forwards. You can see that she's landing not all that far away from the cliff face. So safety is the number one thing to be thinking about, of course. Getting that distance away from the cliff, oh so important. Gaining valuable experience in the Red Bull cliff diving scene. This is what we like to see, keeping it raw, keeping it real. And so the off the cliff dives are the required and intermediate dives, meaning the more simple dives, and then we save the most difficult skills and maneuvers for the platform, which takes place in Ballycastle. So after these rounds, after we see the women and the men, we'll switch over to the tower that was built for the Ballycastle location.
So Ellie Smart who needs a good competition here, to say the least.
Yeah.
Ellie's a fierce competitor. She's got this and 4 other competitions to get back up there. Had a slow start to the season in terms of overall results, points, down in the list. But she dives in a lot of different areas. She has experience, Joey, off these cliff faces. Not just a regular like pool diver all the time and training in pools. She goes all over the place, all over the world, in fact, diving off different locations. So we'll see how she does here in Northern Ireland. Getting a little busy on that one. Nice entry. So Ellie Smart, the 28-year-old from the United States, puts one in for her round 2 dive.
And as you were saying, Trace, he's got a lot of experience with those various athlete projects, diving from helicopters, all kinds of waterfalls and cliffs throughout the globe. She's quite experienced and feels pretty comfortable with that. But as you alluded to, she does have a bit of catching up to do, and she does need a good result here in Northern Ireland on the Causeway Coast. And faring pretty well that dive, pretty vertical. But of course, we're looking for those splashless entries.
You know, once again, you know, the commonality of the divers getting rappelled down to the dive spot. Those who just joined us, only very few dive spots in the past have needed such, you know, apparatuses to get you to the dive spot. But that's, you know, it's cliff diving. So
That's it.
you know,
That's what we want to see.
We've seen, you know, they're getting assists down to the dive spot. But we've seen the athletes have to climb down pretty crazy ladders, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Done a lot themselves there. As we got our next divers, Santhia Panizzi, Brisbane, Australia, 25 years old, currently ranked number 6 in World Series points. So Panizzi putting one in. So a lot of the divers on the women's side, Joey, in round number 2, having a solid round for it being so early in the morning today.
They are. It is so impressive. I dare say not surviving on all that much sleep. Showing off the single twist. And here she comes in for the gliding position or the entry position. Landing feet first, of course. Why? It's because they're diving from 21 meters. From that height, that's around about 71 kilometers per hour, a little under 50 miles per hour. So that's just way too much for the arms, the shoulders, and the wrists to handle going head first. So it's a requirement, well, actually, it's a rule that you can only dive feet first.
Panizzi comes in with a 57.2 on that last dive. Once again, all 4 rounds count. This is round number 2. So this has been added together for Panizzi with her round number 1 dive. So coming in at 138.80. As Panizzi is 9 to go of 12 women. We're getting down into the top 3. It'll be Molly Carlson smiling right there. And following her, Maria Paula Quintero having a great first round dive.
Yeah, she did.
Put her in position before we see Rhiannon Iflin, the 7-time Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series champ, dive last. No surprise there. But the one that puts pressure on her is none other than Molly Carlson right here, ranked number 2 on the World Series points, behind Ifland.
And no, that's not a tea towel, folks, that she's got in her hands with the Crocs. So that is a chamois, just like a car chamois. The athletes use that to drive their legs, particularly when they're doing the tuck position, so when they're in the ball shape. So we've got Molly Carlson doing a front 2 somersaults with a half twist in the tuck position. You'll see her hands grab onto the shins. So it's very important the shins are nice and dry so she doesn't slip out.
Gary Hunt's on the chat.
Hey, Gary.
He said, who won the lucky draw push-up competition?
No, that's one.
What is it?
How to wear it the divers before the
What
event.
is winning it or losing it? If you win it, do you get to choose where you dive? Or if you lose, do you go first? Like
that is the magic question.
Yeah.
Molly Carlson.
Whoa! Nice.
Super clean.
So Molly Carlson, 25-year-old Canadian, putting one down. So this, again, the competitor that puts a little more pressure on Rhiannon Iflin than the rest.
The funny thing is actually just watching the athlete's reaction. And the first thing is just, woo! It's cold. I mean, they don't even seem to be all that concerned about how they perform the dive. That's the first instinct is like, A, I'm safe. B, I am freezing. And C, I hope I did a good dive. But Molly Carlson, you did do a good dive. What do the judges think?
The judges think it's pretty good. You have Olivier Morneau-Ricard throwing up an 8 there. He's the head judge, and he'll give Molly an 8. She'll throw one out, keep a couple 7.5s. So she'll easily pull into the lead. Oh, not easily. Panizzi is a 138, so Carlson at 141 as it stands now. So getting to the top 2 after round number 1, so it's reverse order. So basically, Maria Paula Quintero did a nice job placing in second after round number 1, putting her in this position to dive number 11 before top seed Rhiannon Iflin next. Then we'll move on to the men's round 2, again taking place all earlier today here off the Kimbane Castle dive spot. So Quintero could use a good result here. No question about that, Joey.
Absolutely.
In terms of World Series points.
Stellar first round dive. Double half. Oh! How's the sound on that one?
Wow. So Maria Paula Quintero, Colombia, stepping it up big time.
Maria Paula Quintero drilling the entry, but the sound is what grabbed my attention. Just tearing her way through the water. There's the acceleration curve picking up. Pow, down she goes, disappearing into these mythical waters on the Causeway Coast. This location is definitely steeped in history. Maria Paula Quintero looking to make some history here in the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series stop.
Couple 8s, 7.5s in there. So that ought to be a solid score for Quintero. It is 59.8 on that dive. You add that with round 1 to 146.50. So by 5 points, Quintero will pull into the number 1 spot, setting her up nicely coming into round number 3. So one of the questions, Joey, why feet first? One of the most common questions that we have.
Because it hurts head first. A lot.
Yeah.
Don't do it. No, but we have actually done a few stunts. I've worked on a few movies. One with Jason Statham, actually, Mechanic Resurrection 2. We had to do a scene. We had a head-first dive from 19 meters. That was only a one-off. Only a couple of head-first dives were possible. It's just not possible for the body to withstand that impact time and time again. That is why we're landing feet first. Pretty strong G-forces as well. So you got to imagine you're traveling at 71 kilometers per hour and then you're stopping in around about 4 to 5 meters. I mean, that's a pretty brutal impact.
So Rhiannon Iflin gets a hoist down by a rappelling team to the dive spot, which is 19.5 meters off of the ocean. And moving over to Ballycastle, coming up shortly, it'll be 21 meters, so just a bit higher than this dive spot, but nevertheless more challenging here with diving directly from the rock face. Rhiannon Iflin, though, we've seen her time and time again handling multiple conditions. Such a diverse diver, Joey, and that's why she's the 7-time Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series champion. You can't get there unless you're able to handle that diversity.
She's got a great repertoire of skills as well, so she's got a good range of dives to choose from. So depending on the conditions and depending on what's happened, she's got that capacity to change things up and use dives that will suit the conditions. So she's doing a reverse flying somersault tuck here, so I haven't seen her do this dive for a while.
The water temperature, by the way, answering one of the viewers' questions, 13 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Is it cold? Yes. A bit of a shock for the divers when they hit. So Iflin, beautiful in the air, and another great entry. So Iflin, once again, after 2 rounds, showing extreme consistency.
All class for the all-star diver, Rhiannon Iflin. That is why she has 7 Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series titles to her name. But I just love that layout position. Graceful, smooth. She makes it look easy, but we know it's not easy diving from these cliffs, especially in these locations. Wow, that was a classy dive, Trace. Beautiful.
9s across the board, including a 9.5. by Morneau of Canada, the head judge. So she'll drop that 9.5 and 1.9, keep 3 of them. Big scores for Rhiannon Iflin, 162. So Iflin will move into the top spot. And that completes round number 2 for the women. Kaylee Arnett not competing. She get looking after perhaps a knee injury, correct? So she's not in this competition. That was one of the viewers' questions. Pulling herself out. We hope she's back for our next stop in Oslo, Norway, coming up in just a few weeks. So there are the results after women's round number 2. 7 through 12. Van Kutvik, Gilbert in 12. Rhiannon Iflin holds down the top spot coming into round 3. So this is where round 3 will happen in just a bit. As beautiful Ballycastle Harbor, the name Ballycastle meaning the town of Castle, many of them, and then the theme of the tower we're going to check out in round number 3 is basically a castle. I like it. Why not?
Why not?
Throw a castle in there. But a lot of history, a lot of rich history, and it's the first time that the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series has come to this beautiful location, the Causeway Coast of Northern Ireland, the beautiful seaport village of Ballycastle.
But I just love how we've got these different locations, Dunluce, Kinbane, and of course, diving from the tower in the harbour. And the great thing about diving here, as well as bringing the sport to the people, so the spectators and the locals here get a chance to see the sport up close and personal. And it's a totally different experience when you see cliff diving in the flesh. I've been watching it on TV. Yes, it's impressive, but when you're there, wow, what a sight.
And we'll move on to men's round number 2. So going back to the Kinbane Castle area where we just saw the women, and we will take a look back at what went down in the men's round number 2. So here we go. Once again, this dive spot, the iconic Lord's Prayer. Just a striking visual of these incredible cliffs and the weather cooperating. Here's the start list. Garcia will kick it off. You see on down, Archie Biggin will run dive number 3. He's only 16 years old, by the way, in his first Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. Liechtenstein has some making up to do. He's our World Series leader. Jonathan Paredes, though, getting it done after round number 1. He is the top seed and will dive last. Once again, earlier today, straight from the cliff face. Kinbane, meaning Whitehead in Irish, as we check out
Miguel Garcia.
First diver, Miguel Garcia, to kick things off. So now, Joey, this dive spot 26.5 meters above the ocean.
And that's super high, so that's around about 85 feet up, and you can see that beautiful shot of Miguel Garcia gliding his way down towards the water for that tremendous impact. Again, we're watching dives that are relatively simple, and I say relatively simple. So these are required dives and intermediate dives with fixed degree of difficulty tariffs. Later on, when we dive from the tower, you'll see those far more risky and complicated maneuvers. But here it's all about grace and beauty.
So the 6.5s across the board. 5 judges score between 1 and 10 on this. So you have a 54.60 on that particular dive. You add that together with his first round. If you just joined us, those two added together is what he'll have for his current score. So 153.90. Actually 79.10 on that. So we'll move on to our next diver. Here is Pierrick Schaefer, 21 years old, from Switzerland, in his Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series debut. And Joey, what are the judges looking for? I mean, is this like typical diving that you would see in the pool, like a 3-meter springboard and 10-meter platform? Very similar.
And I think a lot of people kind of mix it up and they think, oh, you must be judging how difficult the dive is, but actually it's all about the execution. So what's the takeoff like? Is the takeoff nice and powerful and strong? Is the position in the air graceful? For example, the legs together, toes pointed, If it's a pike position, the legs should be folded against the chest as much as possible. And of course, you've got to get as vertical as possible if you want the perfect dive. Pierre Schaefer.
All right. Oh,
Busting out the triple
all right.
half.
That's the biggest splash we've seen so far.
Yeah.
But you're not getting awarded for that, right?
No. I mean, all parts fairly and equally judged. The takeoff, beautiful pike position there. Look at that. Very flexible. But on the end of the dive, you can see that he goes past that vertical line. In diving terminology, we'll call that over. So now if he landed with his chest forward, that would be called short. So obviously kicking up a bit of splash there. But every little bit of angle off that vertical line, you feel it. It's like a punch to the back when you over-rotate slightly.
All right, so Schaefer, again, the high and the lower toss. So a 4 and a 4.5 for toss. So we'll keep 3 4.5s. 37.80. That's what you see in yellow there on that dive. 91.80. So
Very tall diver, Pierre, as well, isn't he? 195 centimeters.
Yeah, 6 feet 4 inches. Does it remind you of anybody? Maybe Andy Jones?
I don't think Andy was quite that tall. I'd say Pierre's definitely one of the tallest.
All right, so now we're looking at Archie Biggin making his debut on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. Only 16 years old, the youngest male ever to compete, ever to start on the World Series. Aiden Heslop started when he was 16. He had his first start then, but Biggin is just a couple months younger than him in terms of comparison on the birth dates. So now you have your youngest ever starter on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. If you're 16 years old, Joey, I mean, what were you doing when you were 16? Were you diving with the best guys in the world at that age? No,
he's got some bragging rights now with his schoolmates, that's for sure. But Archie Biggin, 55 kilos, 165 centimeters.
Not
Very
bad.
stylish, huh?
All right.
For his first competition, that's fantastic.
Future of the World Series right there.
And when I saw Archie Biggin dive at the first International Junior High Diving Championships, diving from a 12-meter platform, I was so impressed. Actually, he got second place in that event. He's done a lot of training at Area 47 in Austria, diving with Anna Nifland, diving with David Kulturi. I mean, he's just He's a fan of cliff diving. He's much like Aiden Heslop, you know.
Yeah.
When he was young, he knew what he wanted to do. He's just 12 years of age, and here he is living the dream. 16 years of age on the cliffs here on the Causeway Coast and impressing the judges.
He actually went to a workshop when he was about like 7 years old where Aiden Heslop, but Aiden Heslop was very young at that time, even being one of the coaches hosting the workshop, but that gave Biggin some experience and inspired him to be in the cliff diving world. The 2022 Junior World Championship silver medalist. And he actually caught up with Frosty after his dive. Frosty.
I heard you missed the bus this morning. You had a little trouble getting to bed last night?
Yeah, I mean, I was shattered, and it's an early wake up, so I didn't hear my alarm go off, and I woke up when the bus set off. So yeah, I was very late. I had to have my dad to come and drive me, come and taxi me around.
Well, it seems like it was worth it. You made it in time just to get in one warm-up dive. How did today feel compared to yesterday?
I think, I don't know if the water's colder, but I felt a bit of a slap on my face when I went in the water on the warm-up dive. So conditions feel a bit tougher maybe today. But competition dive, it felt pretty nice through the water, and I don't think it was as bad as the warm-up one, so it feels good.
Now, I know you've been following the series for a long time. You've been with us before, but you're officially part of it now. How does it feel to be diving with so many people you've been watching over the years?
Yeah, it feels incredible. It's like meeting your heroes. Yeah, and they're very welcoming. It's like a family.
That's awesome. We're excited to see you. Round 3 coming up next.
Yep.
All right, thanks a lot, Frosty. Good stuff.
How's that missing the bus on your first competition?
I mean, it's like your first ever competition on the Red Bull Cliff Diving where you get the invite, You missed the bus. You oversleep.
Hey, how come no one woke him up? Come on. You got to wake Archie up.
And his first interview on the World Series is about him oversleeping, you know?
That's awesome.
What a way to kick it off. We're going to be, you know,
his dad must be wanting to strangle him on the way there, like, you little thing.
I have a feeling we're going to be looking back at that interview 10 years from now. He used to be like, here's the World Series champion from 2034, Archie Biggin.
But he kicked it off with
this
whoops.
is his first interview ever on the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. All right.
Well, here's a guy who did make the bus.
I know.
Yeah, he got it together.
Well, barely, probably, knowing this guy, Nikita Fedotov.
Yeah.
He's missed a few buses in his day.
He's had a couple of questionable evenings.
So here's the 29-year-old. Nikita Fedotov, very experienced diver here. He's been on the series quite a while. 5 career podiums, all of them third-place finishes. Still looking to upgrade onto that top spot on the podium. But he had one of those third-place finishes this season as he kicks things off. Beautiful dive. Whoa, yes!
And I think that with that dive he pushed so far, he almost made it back to the beach. There's the classic flying front. It's one of my favorite dives.
And how come they are pushing out so far? Are they looking like to get over some rocks or something down there? What?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's when you're standing up there sometimes as well, you can't really see the landing zone. So sometimes you feel like you have to push out a long way. But of course, you do need to push out to clear the actual cliff face. And sometimes there's some rock ledges underneath the water, so that might be part of the reason why he's just pushing out a little bit further. But love those stylish flying front dives. Beautiful.
Big scores, though. He had a 9 in there. He'll drop one of them. The high and the lower toss. Reminder on that. 72.80 on that dive. So Fedotov coming into the top spot with a 132. Fedotov. Look at the start list here. He's 4 to go of the 12 men. Reminder, this went down earlier in a Kimbane Castle dive spot. There was a Dunluce Castle dive spot yesterday. That was round number 1. This is Kimbane Castle. After this, we'll be live from the beautiful Ballycastle Harbor off of the platforms. Right here is Konstantin Popovic, the Romanian shark, the 2023 Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series champion. Look at that right there, Joey. That's just freaky of where they have to get down to, and especially with the wind.
Exactly. But it's great for the audience to see that perspective, the bird's eye view from up top, just to understand what it's like to be up there. And you see the scuba divers, the safety divers down below, and they just look like these tiny little figures. This is round about the height of the 9th story of a high-rise balcony, to give that some perspective. And that's way up there.
Popovic, winner of 2 stops this season of 3. The one that he didn't win is because he had to bow out because of that right there. You see the tape around the knee area. Hyperextended that knee, that left knee, in Boston. Still got some points, but, you know. And then he just charged back for the next stop in Polignano Amari.
And I've never seen a guy work that hard with rehabilitation. I mean, he just did everything right to come back and then win in Italy. I mean, that was just a phenomenal performance. He's still backing off with a degree of difficulty with his arm stand dives, and the knee's still plaguing him a little. But hopefully in Oslo, Norway, he can come back with that infamous back arm stand dive.
There you go, Popovic showing you what it takes now to get up there in the points, drilling that entry, Joey. Well, beautiful dive.
Yeah, it was a beautiful dive. But what was interesting, I mean, because he's got to move away from the cliff face, it slows down the dive. I'm looking at him going, man, that's looking pretty slow. And you can see there, he's like, right, I really have to work hard. And he digs really deep there. So you have to do a lot of extra movement, really digging into that pike position to reduce his radius to pick up the speed to finish the dive. So he's in a little bit of trouble at the beginning of the dive, and you'll often feel that at the beginning. You're like, oh, I'm too fast, I'm too slow, and you have to make those adjustments. You did a fine job.
Popovic will pull into the lead, so a grand total of 149.45 on this. We'll talk about the other Romanian, Catalin Preda. You caught up with him, Joey, just a couple days ago. What's the update on his status?
Yeah, look, that was a hard impact in Boston, but there were just some other sort of complications. There was a bit of pneumonia that sort of crept in, so he had a bit of a stint in hospital.
He's still taking some time off.
Yep, so just take a bit of time off, but he's back training now. He's feeling much better, and we're wishing Catlin Preda all the best, and we hope to see him on the cliffs again soon.
Love watching this guy, the other tall one out there, Alexei Prigorov, Ukraine, 37 years old. Currently ranked number 6 in the World Series standings. Kind of where he sits right there. You know, he's never really, in the top 3 consistently. He's never outside of the top 8 consistently. He's right in there and always in the mix. Did have his first podium last season in Paris. His career, 30 starts on the resume on the World Series for Prigorov. Prigorov pushing way out there. Joey, a reminder of the role of the safety divers.
So, safety divers there to retrieve the athletes just in case there is a bad landing, and occasionally that does happen from time to time. And that way, the safety divers are right in the water and able to retrieve the divers and put them into safe position and check them out. And you can see Alexei Prigorov doing a fine job, just ever so slightly short of vertical on the entry. Really impressing us with that 3-position front triple. So we do need to correct ourselves on the pronunciation of Dunluce. Dunluce.
Thank you, Amy. 147. Yeah, exactly. 147 total on that. Once again, all 4 rounds are added together. This is round 2 of the men. Happening earlier today. 3 total dive spots in this competition from the Causeway Coast of Northern Ireland. Yesterday in Dunluce. Today, earlier, very early, is Kimbane Castle dive spot. And then we will go live coming up shortly, beginning with the women in the Ballycastle Harbor. This, you're looking at James Lichtenstein of the United States, poking over the top there, our current World Series leader.
He's just using that rope just so he can lean a bit further forward so he can just really see what's going on. When you're standing a little bit further back, it's hard to understand how close the safety divers are. You can just see him just moving and directing the divers into a position that he feels comfortable with. And that will also help the athletes see the surface of the water as well, and help them adjust. See, they're just directing a little bit more. And sometimes the athletes will put them in a strategic place if they're doing, let's say, a flying front. They like the safety divers further out so they can see them in front, and that helps them lower the legs and try and find that vertical line. James Lichtenstein here, forward, flying 2 somersaults with half twists. So check out the fly at the beginning of this dive. Super interesting, super old school.
Oh yeah, there you go. James Lichtenstein, so consistent this season. 2 second-place finishes and a 3rd, still awaiting his first ever World Series victory. Not easy to do with Konstantin Popovich back to strength. Well, not to full strength, but still back in the mix.
And here's the flying position. So this was a kind of a dive that was very common in the 80s and the 90s, and it sort of went out of fashion. But now James Lichtenstein is bringing it back into fashion. I think it's cool. I think it's stylish, especially from the cliff face here.
Joey thinks it's stylish. I'm thinking it's stylish. Remember, tomorrow, folks, we're going to go live on Red Bull TV at 18:30, 6:30 p.m. CEST on Red Bull TV for round number 4. We're still going to catch round number 3 today after this. Coming up shortly from Ballycastle Harbor, but round 4, again, live tomorrow on Red Bull TV. Round number 1 from Dunluce took place on TikTok live today, YouTube. That's where we're at now. Go ahead and weigh in on your comments if you have them.
There's a few yeah, speaking of comments, there's a few little here. So the judges are doing very tough today. So Doug Ross was saying that. But yes, they are quite tough, but they expect a lot from the athletes. They don't throw out 10s and perfect scores very easily. So again, they're judging the takeoff, the flight, and the entry.
Jolito Martinez, 21 years old of Mexico, really made an impact coming on strong. His debut at the second stop in Boston, landed a 4th place finish. He's been on the series since, and you see why right there.
He just went for it, didn't he?
Yeah.
That was awesome. It's a forward 3 somersault to the half twist tuck. Just stepping up the DD, when I say DD.
Wow, that's crazy how he stops that rotation.
1.5 twisting triple. So yeah, the twist at the beginning, the tuck in the middle. That's the cool thing about this sport. The athletes are able to pick and choose where they want to do the somersaults and twists. I just love that he did that twist at the beginning, looped it over into the tuck position. I'm so impressed with the youngster, the new guard, the new generation coming up the ranks. Great stuff, Jolito.
Yeah, 81 total on that dive. So there you go. He moves into the top spot with a 1:53.90. Great job by Martinez, the young 21-year-old. Now the other Mexican diver to go. 3 of them in this competition. From Mexico, you have Martinez, you have Guzman coming up right here. We have Paredes in the mix. Still yet to get back to Mexico for one of these stops.
Oh, we got to. I mean, we've had some classic competitions there. We had the one in the cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula. So the cenote is that sinkhole. And you have the platform perched above the rim of the sinkhole, diving to this dark freshwater lagoon, if you will. It's 60 meters deep. Such an impressive location. Of course, the famous cliffs of Acapulco. That was my last competition, as a matter of fact, diving from those cliffs. Made infamous in those Elvis movies. Very challenging location, Acapulco, actually. Incredibly steep, not steep cliff, but I should say the cliff face angles out a long way. You really have to push out with as much power as possible. Let's see how Sergio Guzman, the Mexican, fares with his forward 2 somersaults with a half twist in the tuck position. That's the ball shape.
All right, Guzman putting one down. Very nice rip entry here in Northern Ireland. Stop number 4. Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. This is round 2, which happened earlier today, round 2 of 4. So we'll head over to Ballycastle Harbor following this round for the men that took place earlier, and then Joey and I and the rest of the divers will be live from the harbor, and you can catch the finals, the 4th and final round tomorrow on Red Bull TV, 18:30, 6:30 p.m. CEST. As Guzman awaits his scores from the judges, they come in with a 64.80, so 147.05 on that dive for Guzman. Put him into 3rd place. Guzman 9 to go of 12, so that actually sets him up pretty nicely going into round 3. Once again, all 4 rounds are added together, so you have to be super consistent in this competition. It's not easy to be super consistent with 3 different dive spots.
Especially when it's windy. I mean, we're lucky we don't have too much swell and rough waves here. And that can happen if the wind direction changes. It can get super choppy.
So here's Aiden Heslop, winner of the 2nd stop of the season in Boston, USA. Always been in the running, always been in the mix the last couple years for the King Kahekili Trophy. Keeps getting edged out by somebody.
Yeah.
He'll get his day.
No, he's come very, very close to grabbing that King Kahekili Trophy. Especially in...
Look at that shot. Just a beautiful Atlantic Ocean here on the northern coast of Northern Ireland. Aiden Heslop perched on that narrow limestone headland jutting out into the sea. Oof. Spectacular.
Spectacular indeed. Really see how high these cliffs are.
Did you dive better when it was these different types of, like, these locations versus platforms, Joey, or were you just always thinking about how scary it is?
No.
This Heslop comes in anyway.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I really like the natural locations. I mean, my favourite spot was Hawaii. Actually, King Kaikili's Leap. That's where I won the Red Bull cliff diving title there, and way back in 2002. But it was just a spectacular location. And yeah, there's something about diving in nature. I mean, I really preferred that to diving in pools. And I know young Aiden, I mean, he spent a long time, when he was young, in the dive pool indoors, and he just couldn't wait to get into the cliff diving scene, and he's really relishing this experience diving here from the Kinbane Cliffs. And he did a great little target diving project that he did here, that he did in Austria, in Wolfgang See. And if you can check out his Instagram, you'll see him doing this target diving into these circles, or basically trying to make sure he can hit a specific target in the water. Super cool project. Check that out.
Carlos Jimeno.
Okay, we've got Carlos Jimeno just getting ready. So tying up his chamois. So the chamois is used to dry off the legs. Make sure he doesn't slip out of the dives.
Thanks for clarifying that. It's the biggest question I get.
Yep. What's that tea towel doing
After
up there?
broadcasting, they're like, what are they doing throwing that thing into the water? And there it goes. The sandals and chamois.
They've
To walk back up to the dive spot or to get out and be able to put some protection on your feet. Joey just described it. And, of course, that chamois to dry yourself off. Good stuff.
that chamois throwing and sandal throwing. It's the most dangerous part for the safety divers.
You're
They've
fun
been,
I'm sure
collected in the head quite a number of times.
Knowing you for several years now, you were always trying to hit somebody with it. Woohoo! Like
target diving. That's what I was talking about, like with Aiden.
Whack! There's Zuber's chamois again.
There's my Crocs. All right, let's get serious. What are we doing? Forward 2 somersaults.
Why? It's cliff diving. We're having fun. We'll get serious in the live broadcast tomorrow for round number 4. But right now, Carlos Jimeno putting one into the sea here. And this is just such a beautiful dive spot.
But Carlos Jimeno cooking with a little bit too much gas here. When I say gas, just over-rotating the dive, coming out early, having a look at the water there. He really has to keep the body as straight as possible to try and slow it down. He's like, oh, stay straight.
Whoa, pull the parachute.
Stay straight.
Pull the parachute.
And he went over. So one little trick he could have done was to get the arms above the head a little earlier and then bring them back down again to slow the dive down.
My analogy to that is like, you know, I've talked to you about it before. It's like when you're running downhill and your feet get away from you. You know what I mean? You're like, there's no stay underneath. Stay underneath me. Stay underneath me. All right, Jimeno. 6.5, 7. He's not going to be pleased with that. He's usually in a better position after the second round. Jimeno is. He's always a threat for the podium, but he's going to have some good dives in round 3 and 4 to make up for this one.
Yeah, and they only get one warm-up dive as well, so it's difficult to gauge how to do the dive when you've only got one warm-up dive, and that's because it takes a long time to get into position as we watch Jonathan Paredes holding on to that rope for grim death.
Here's our top seed, John Paredes. He's done a very nice job after the first round of diving, pretty much at every stop, and every stop that we go to that he competes in, Joey. Always done a nice job. He's had some struggles over the years, the past few years, and he's come back strong, and actually had a little mental break after Boston. Took a little time off and some psychology.
Yeah, and they actually call it now
really
like
nice job.
Yeah,
back to that third place finish in Polignano. Sorry.
Yeah. No, they call it lost skill syndrome now
instead of like twisties or whatever, right?
Yeah, let's get a little bit more formal with it, but it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Tom Daly, who we see in the Olympic diving as well, and he lost a skill and had to kind of rebuild it.
Yeah.
Gary Hunt as well, you know, one of the all-time legends.
I did it in skiing. Yeah. I was an acrobat skiing, aerial skiing. It happened to me.
And to be specific, and that means that sometimes you can lose your way in the air, and it's very difficult to get back on the horse to do that dive. So the biggest fear of the athletes is losing their way in the air and not understanding where they are, what's up and what's down, particularly with the more difficult dives that we see on the platforms. We're doing multiple twists and somersaults. Yeah, there's not too much chance of that when we're doing the more graceful dives.
Again, this is earlier today. The Kinbane Castle dive spot, the Lord's Prayer. Jonathan Paredes, it's a top seed, putting one in there. So Paredes showing some consistency once again. He's fighting for another podium spot. Looking good so far.
Yeah, diving super consistent in the off the cliff rounds. And his real attribute is the grace and the beauty. The Barani, that's the front somersault with a half twist at the end of the dive. Seamless, effortless, smooth as silk. And that's the beautiful thing about when you see great sports people, like you're watching tennis, like you're watching anything, they just make it look effortless, right? Just looks smooth, looks easy. But there's nothing easy about the sport of cliff diving.
Paredes, he knows that for sure. A lot of experience. He won the King Kong Healy Trophy, one of only 5 men to do it, actually. 166.25 will be the grand total. So Paredes keeps the train rolling for Team Mexico. 166.25 will put Paredes in the top spot, followed by young Martinez, who has been mentored by Paredes. So Mexico 1 and 2 here. Popovich in the number 3 position. You see 7 through 12 with James Lichtenstein in 8th for the United States, the World Series leader. But once again, all 4 rounds are added together. So it's going to perhaps change tremendously through the next rounds. So, and our big apologies, round number 3 from Ballycastle Harbor will actually get underway tomorrow because of technical difficulties. So we're going to square that away, and round 3 and 4 will go down tomorrow. Competition itself is happening now, but the broadcast will be tomorrow. Keep up with redbullcliffdiving.com, and so you will be able to view round 3 and round 4 tomorrow as that competition once again is getting underway now. But we will see you tomorrow. And again, redbullcliffdiving.com is the place to go, or check our social media pages, Instagram and Facebook. But for now, Joey Zuber, myself, Trace Worthington, and our team, we will see you tomorrow for round 3 and 4 from Ballycastle Harbor and the Causeway Coast of Northern Ireland.